Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. This is astrologer Shannon Cunningham, and today we're going to take a look at the transit of Venus through Libra. So this is going to be taking place from the 13th of October through the 6th of November, and it's going to be a really just pleasant, straightforward transit, one that we can really utilize for our benefit. So we're going to take a look at this from a technical perspective first, and then we will look at this in terms of what we can expect from this on a collective level, how to make the best of it on a personal level, and then we'll go ahead and take this through sign by sign to see where this transit is going to be taking place in your own chart. And I do definitely recommend checking for your rising sign. That way the horoscope is going to align with the whole sign house in your chart that contains Libra. But definitely feel free to adjust if you use a quadrant house system, or if you want to check for your sun. That is all perfectly valid and good and can give you more perspective on this transit for you. But yeah, with all of that said, this is just a direct transit of Venus through Libra. I do want to point out a little bit of a technicality, which is the next time that we have Venus in Libra, it's going to represent part of a retrograde cycle that Venus will be going through next year. So later next year, Venus will move into Scorpio and then go retrograde back into Libra and then go forward again. So this is a very uncomplicated transit here that we should definitely utilize. It's also making some very interesting alignments throughout this period of time. So I have reference to those here, and we're going to look through these all one by one. So on the 13th, 14th of October, we have Venus creating a Kite aspect formation to the outer planets. On the 19th of October, we have the moon coming through and conjoining Venus. Very shortly thereafter, then we have the new moon in Libra, which is going to be ruled by this Venus. We have a square to Jupiter on the 3rd of November, and then on the 5th of November, we have a full moon in Taurus, which is also going to be ruled by this Venus in Libra. So we're going to be looking at those one by one after we look at this from a general perspective. So Libra is ruled by Venus, which is part of the reason why this is such a helpful, wonderful transit to be able to take advantage of. And this is the active domicile. So it's more focused externally. It's more focused on action, initiation, creating things. So Venus itself is very focused on creating harmony, bringing things together, beautifying things, creating pleasant, joyful experiences, love and joy in and of itself. And its Libra domicile is very focused on similar things, but more so in the human realm and in the social realm. So that balance, peace, diplomacy in relations between human beings, between people. This is going to be a theme that this is bringing up, and certainly not too soon, right? So this is also going to be speaking to matters of connecting technologies, bringing people together through technology as well. That's going to come through with one of the alignments that it's creating, but we do also have in Libra a sign that is represented by a technology, the scales. So how do we bring things together? How do we reconcile things? How do we create a sense of understanding and agreement, civility? This is very affirmative of, again, humanity and human relations and a sense of understanding between people. There's a lot of social intelligence, again, bringing people together, social graces, humor here. There's this kind of openness. So one thing that's really helpful with this, and again, never too soon, is that with Venus here, we do also have the other benefic Jupiter in the sign of its exaltation in Cancer. And so there's a lot of support, very strong for relief efforts, for humanitarian caretaking, with both benefics dignified. And what I really like about this, especially with the aspect that it's going to be making to Jupiter, which we're going to dive into, is it's going to create a square, which is a bit of a tense or adjustment required, response required, kind of a frictive aspect between the two benefics. But that could wind up with this Venus and Libra reining in some of the one-sidedness that sometimes comes with a Jupiter in Cancer, or at least bring some argumentation which is effective against that kind of a thing, against one-sidedness. Venus here is absolutely going to concern itself with trying to create some sense of understanding of different sides and between different sides and come to a just kind of a conclusion. So we could even see with that square something along the lines of like scandals around imbalance, excess, power, abuse, things like this. There's a justice that this Venus and Libra is going to wind up bringing in. Again, especially with the alignments it's making. That's part of the reason why we're going to go through all of those one by one. But yeah, generally, matters of harmonious functioning of society become much more prominent. There's matters of alliances, mergers, bringing things together that this is going to wind up emphasizing quite a bit. So in terms of personal relationships, but also collective relationships, this is really helpful. So some major positive signs here. This is favoring balance and consideration, reasonability, sensibility, order, as well as ceremony and ritual, which is something that we can definitely take advantage of this. If you are, for instance, Halloween is going to be taking place during this Venus and Libra. So parties, social gatherings, coming together for fun, joyousness, things like that. That is really helped by this alignment. One little caveat to that, I know that there are some actions that are planned on a specific date. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean, of October. And that will be when Venus is in Libra. That's great. But on that date, we do have a moon opposition to Saturn. So I would be a little bit careful about that, specifically on that date. I don't really talk about these things directly, publicly, but if you're planning on going out on that date, definitely be careful. So this is also really good for creating positive results and outcomes for things that are initiated during this period of time. We actually have, that's kind of referred to as electional astrology, basically, when we're starting things at a specific period of time, or we're looking at when something was started to get some sense of how that's going to wind up playing out. I do want to point out, basically during this period of time, we have Venus in its own sign in Libra, dignified. We have a dignified Jupiter in Cancer. We also have Mars in its own sign of Scorpio. Now, I do caution about specific periods of time when it comes to electional astrology. Sometimes you can wind up picking a weird time of day, but that does lean us pretty favorably toward the types of outcomes that we're basically going for, given the alignment. So again, things that are initiated throughout this period of time are likely to just kind of go a little bit more smoothly, for better or worse. But yeah, also in terms of community or group efforts, collaboration, this is really helpful for that. So anything that you need to plan with other people, that should go a lot more smoothly. And like I said, this favors justice. So unity, reconciliation, harmony, bringing things into balance, even if that means that there needs to be some sense of restitution or something along those lines. This is also very helpful for making agreements for matters of equality, fairness. It also favors the creation of matters of beauty and comfort. So it oversees that and it can help with that quite a bit. I also want to point out some things to kind of avoid for best results in this period of time. Some of this is going to be due to, this can cause you to fall on the wrong side of this Venus. Some of it is going to be due to, these are some of the things that Venus and Libra can go a bit overboard with. But during this broader period of time, I would definitely avoid for best results emotional reasoning or reactivity, rashness, hate, extremes of behavior, crudeness without eloquence or ignorance. Now, all of that is due to the fact that Venus is going to be trying to rein that kind of stuff in during this time, and yet we have other alignments that are going on, which are going to be encouraging those kinds of things in different ways. So that strong emotionality, this is Venus, but it's in Libra. It's in an air sign. It's very reasonable. It's very sensible. It knows the lines of etiquette, decorum, appropriateness, and it's not inclined to get too over emotional. And so that's going to be something that it's going to try to pull back on, especially though reactivity, rashness, things like this. Venus in Libra is very strong on deliberating. When it comes to hate and ignorance, these are also things that will very much offend the sensibilities of a Venus in Libra. Extremes of behavior are going to be an ongoing problem. And I hate to say it, but that's just going to be a factor here. Venus is going to start to, especially later on in this transit, Venus is going to start to move into basically a T-square with what is an opposition basically between Jupiter and Pluto, which is extremes. That opposition isn't going to wind up perfecting this year. It'll wind up perfecting next July, but it's within orb, and Venus is going to have to pass through that area as it's moving through the later degrees of Libra. So that's going to be an issue, and it's going to be something that this Venus in Libra is going to be fretting about for quite a bit of time during this alignment here. It will be trying to correct for that, though. That is something to keep in mind, is that hopefully we cannot lose a sense of hope or proportionality during this period of time. We will see extremes. We're going to be seeing some weird behavior. This Venus is going to be helping us along those lines. So wait for the other shoe to drop before, again, getting into this kind of rash reactivity about certain things that we see. I also feel that crudeness without eloquence is going to be something of an issue. We will get a Mercury-Mars in Scorpio conjunction while we have this Venus here. And I do think that we're going to see some ugly words, and those are also going to be something that Venus and Libra will be pushing against. Again, this is concerned with decorum, etiquette, what is acceptable, reasonable, balanced social behavior. Those lines are going to be quite clear with this Venus. Now, on that front, one of the things that Venus and Libra can certainly do when it itself is feeling out of balance, which again, I do feel like it's gonna feel like it's correcting a lot here. So harsh judgments, pretense, matters of just rejecting things out of hand because it's approaching incorrectly or it's bringing a yucky energy with it. Yes, we definitely see with Libra sometimes matters of indecision, kind of, wishy-washy on the fence, trying to really understand people and so on. But this is a cardinal sign. It's not always like that. If you've known a Libra and they are kind of thrown off by something or they're really put off by something, they will respond, and they will do so in a way that makes very clear just how beneath them the behavior that they are witnessing appears to them. So that is something to keep in mind. And another side of that kind of same idea is this kind of broad application or defensiveness around preferences. So taking the subjective and making it objective. So again, when it comes to things like social graces, eloquence, etc., these can be subjective areas. Usually Venus and Libra is not going to be too pushy with that unless it feels like it is required to. But again, like I said, I feel like it's going to be in a position where it feels the need to carve out these lines, to put up these boundaries, basically. And with Libra being the exaltation of Saturn, it very much likes to have those lines. That's part of also the aesthetic of Libra, which is generally very balanced, very clean. It wants to know where those boundaries are. It wants to have them fair, certainly, but it wants to have them constructed, put in place, and respected. When it's on its back foot, it's going to start imposing that as something of an objective reality. Now, we could definitely wind up falling into that. A lot of us do, myself included, around these things of, again, etiquette and so on, which can be kind of subjective. And especially when it comes to the sides and the one-sidedness that can also wind up coming through with Jupiter and Cancer. So true justice, always really important to keep in mind when we're dealing with Libra, is one, it's not one-sidedness all in someone else's favor. This is something I'm always preaching to Libras and Libra risings, that there's also a need to take oneself into equal consideration with other people, but it's also important to apply the same rules and standards across the board. And this is more of a collective Venus and Libra kind of a thing. So true justice winds up coming from applying steady standards without allowing for personal interests to turn these into just one direction or another. So not applying rules and standards just in one direction. Now, I know that we're going to see that because we see that sometimes in the world, but not falling into that ourselves, I think, is going to be something very helpful here. The thing is also, there can be an overcorrection out of a concern of an imbalance that comes through with Venus and Libra too. So those being those harsh judgments, which wind up applying this kind of punitive restitution. Now, we do also need to come back to that on the fence aspect here, which is also a factor when we're dealing with Libra. So brushing over conflicts, getting stuck in a sense of indecision. The reason for that is that this is such a fascinating time. We have multiple minor grand trines taking place, one including this Venus, another that I'll try and point out to you guys, which is going to include Venus later when it moves into Scorpio, but is currently building up between Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So we can make some progress, but that will require making some decisions, of course, as to which direction that progress is going to be moving in. So trying not to get stuck in an indecision kind of a loop here. Also, insincerity can sometimes wind up coming up for the sake of harmony or saving face or like keeping the peace, just coming to any sort of an agreement, just to have an agreement, just to be able to feel like, okay, we're on the same page, even if holding out would have been a little bit better. And then, yeah, just coming back to like disrespect, argumentativeness is going to be an issue for this Venus in Libra. It will put up an argument, but it's going to, again, want for that to be reasonable and balanced. And with the Mercury conjunction to Mars in Scorpio, that's not something we're going to see on every side of this. So that is something to keep in mind. But yeah, again, this is a really wonderful alignment that in our personal lives, we can absolutely utilize in really wonderful ways. It's going to be a little bit more complex on the collective scene, obviously, just because that's a bit of a mess right now. And this Venus is going to look at that as, okay, this is all sorts of out of balance here. But it's going to help us to try and rein some of that in. And hopefully we can do our best to contribute to that by also trying to stay balanced, stay reasonable, stay logical throughout this period of time, and make sure that we are creating as harmonious of connections as we can, and that we're being very civil with other people, and that we are upholding our sense of social graces as well. Also, finally, because I don't think I've stressed this quite a bit, but again, when we're dealing with Venus, there are these matters of beauty and comfort. So in my view, again, we have the two domiciles of Venus, Taurus and Libra. Libra's a little bit more luxurious. To me, it's a little bit more like clean lines in terms of aesthetics. It's very much about symmetry and again, balance of form. So if that's something that you are after in any way in your life, this should be really helpful to that end. But also any sort of beauty changes or things that you're wanting to make on a personal level in terms of appearance, but even just in terms of appreciating beauty, appreciating harmony, appreciating peace, leaning into that. If that means maybe pulling back from some fretful kinds of connections that you have, creating that sense of peace within yourself, I think, is going to be really important. Maybe that means just not participating in certain conversations or things like this that you know kind of throw you off balance. Anything along those lines on a personal level that's going to resonate with you. That there's a sense of inner peace here that is really important to maintaining the kind of balance that Venus and Libra is really going to prefer. So with that said, let's go ahead and look at all of these specific aspects that are being created here. So as I mentioned, we have a grand trine that is forming between this Venus in Libra right when it ingresses. So this is going to be like the 13th, 14th of October. And this is reaching up and out to all of the outer planets. So the outer planets being Uranus, which is at 0 degrees of Gemini, Neptune, which is at 0 degrees of Aries, is going to play into this as well in a way that I'll mention. But we also then have a trine to Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius. So there's this grand trine in the air signs, and then they're all also configured to, in a kite formation, this Neptune, which is out in the 1st degree of Aries. So off the bat here, notice that we have this little S under Pluto. This is one of the things that I'm probably most hopeful about when it comes to this time of specifically the timing of when Venus is hopping into Libra here. So the moment that Pluto is stationing to go direct, which is to say, it's starting a new kind of journey through more of Aquarius here. And Pluto itself can get way out of balance. This represents power dynamics. This represents extremes of transformation, extremes of change. This is collective power, social power, the power of networks in Aquarius. This is also really deep-seated, long-lasting, underlying change. And especially on the social front when it's in Aquarius. This is a very social sign. So Pluto's going to be working on the level of society very strongly for about 20 years here. But it's going to have those retrograde points, that back and forth. We're also getting it out of bounds, which is pushing it even more extreme. That's a complicated subject. I did a whole video on that if you're interested. I'll try and remember to link it in the description and at this point in the video. But what we have here is Pluto is starting a new trek, again, deeper into Aquarius. And there's two different weird fronts that we're dealing with Pluto and Aquarius. One is the power of tech, big tech, right? So we see the major empowerment of that industry and also the seedy underbelly of it. All of the bad stuff, the stuff that we're scared of that is coming through, that we don't like to look at, that we're worried about collectively. There is also, though, again, that social collective aspect of Aquarius. And when we get Pluto moving through Aquarius, the last time was, of course, during the American Revolution and the French Revolution and so forth. It was a very socially, collectively revolutionary period of time. And that fits perfectly with the themes that Pluto winds up bringing up here. So we have that other side of it. There's always going to be a push and a pull when we're dealing with Pluto. But right now, it is between tech oligarchs and populations, society, the collective, right? Social good and power in numbers, basically. So the fact that we have that stationing point, which is a seeding point of Pluto's further ingress into Aquarius, this to me is a really positive omen about this going, again, a lot more in terms of social harmony and the human picture here. So not only do we have that trine taking place at this moment, but we also have that trine as something that's really baked into this coming year of Pluto and Aquarius. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a huge amount of positive social changes taking place. I know it looks a little weird right now. Trust me, next year looks a lot different. And so this is really seeding that. I love this. We also then have Uranus and Gemini, which is speaking to similar things. We also had Uranus and Gemini during the American Revolution, etc. It's known for changing up social systems. It's known for creating quick progress, basically, on a human level. Again, all the air signs have a lot to do with the social and with the human. There are also those technological aspects to all of these signs as well, though. And that lays out perfectly where a lot of these fault lines are recognized right now, right? So it does make a lot of sense, but with Venus holding up the Libra side of this in this grand trine, I think this is really wonderful. We're likely to see a lot of communications about the future of society with this kind of an alignment. Now, with the opposition between Venus and Neptune also playing into this, and then of course we have the sextiles from Neptune, this little configuration here is known as a minor grand trine, and this is going to be sticking with us for some years. This is kind of unlike anything that we've seen before, with all of the outer planets all ingressing one immediately after the other, and all in this really wonderful developmental kind of an alignment with each other. It's not quite a grand trine where everyone is just in agreement as to the direction in which things are going, but there's a support system there, basically. And we're going more and more into this starting next year. That's some of the big changes that I'm mentioning. So communications around that. What is that going to look like? What's the aim for that? We're able to imagine that. We're able to see the positive angle of that with the opposition between Venus looking directly at Neptune and Aries and saying, I can see how you could go in a couple of different directions here. Neptune and Aries could go quite martial. It could create a kind of culture of conflict, but it could also create a culture of individual independent rights and defending those things and really strongly believing in the rights of all different people to just kind of live their lives, to pursue what it is that they are desiring in their life for themselves without interference. And that opening up so many avenues of pioneering and innovation and things like this. this kind of new spring with Aries of cultural imagination, new narratives, and so forth. Also, we have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction coming up. I'm sorry, I know I'm going into a lot here, but there's so much going on with these alignments. That conjunction in and of itself between these two planets, which has been building up and is going to perfect in February, is also speaking to new narratives and so forth. So Venus is looking directly at that. It's looking at the possibilities there. This is all very, what are we doing in the future? How are we structuring things in a way that's going to be sustainable and harmonious and fair and balanced and just going forward with this alignment with Venus here? So a lot of communication around that as well. Also innovations around connection. So perhaps around platforms, maybe social media platforms and things like this, ways of connecting with people. Also in a meat space, to use a crude term that hopefully is eloquent enough for this Venus, but also innovations of form, function, aesthetic. So how is it that we're wanting for things to look? This could even speak to the way that we design society. I know a lot of people are getting a bit tired of how things just seem very utilitarian and not human-centered, especially when it comes to like social design and things like this. It seems like a lot of the idiosyncrasies and the spirit, basically, of humanity has kind of gotten sucked out of a lot of the aesthetics that are being built too. And I do mean that also on that architectural Saturn exalting in Libra aspect of it as well. So even when it comes to like the way that our buildings look, the way that our cities look, smart cities and things like this, a lot of people are not very convinced right now that that's going to be something that they are at all interested in that form, that function, that way of connecting, not to mention that aesthetic where everything is kind of surveillance and profit oriented within our cities and our communities and so forth. So that really speaking to the way that we connect with people. How do we want to connect in our cities? That's obviously going to be something that's going to be coming up in a very significant way, a conversation that's going to wind up being had. Do we want to have like stormtroopers in our communities, or do we want to gather up joyfully and express our social views and our social preferences? Clearly, we're going to be seeing that in the coming month. Venus is going to be helping a lot with that whole conversation. There's also an element of social intelligence and even cunning here. So just because something looks harmonious, just because something looks good, I don't want to draw out the negative aspects here, but I do kind of need to point it out. There could be, for one thing, really brilliant communications along all of these lines. Wonderful, intelligent, clever ways of connecting and communicating, things like this. But that could also be spoken to by the connection, the conjunction between Mercury and Mars. Some aspects of this may not be for the best. So just make sure that you're using reason, that you're taking things on a case-by-case basis and not just going by how things look. So further with this, again, new ideas, new understanding, an ability to connect with people, clarity in relationships and relationship dynamics. So on a personal level, but again, also on that social level, maybe even on an international level. And also in terms of social stratification. That's, again, with Venus and Saturn being the rulers, the domicile ruler and the exaltation ruler of Libra, that social stratification is going to be a major topic that Libra's concerned with as well. So clarity around stratification, clarity around where people are placed in society and which connections are actually considerate of them or not. But again, pulling this to extremes where things could get a bit out of balance, over intellectualization can definitely wind up taking place in this area. We do have a lot of planets in water signs as well, so hopefully that guards against some of that. But again, like I was saying, where there's this objectification of a subjective kind of point of view, where there's this kind of pretense that's built into, it's almost like a faux intellectualization of subjective views and an emotional kind of a perspective, which is based on individual considerations and not social considerations. So there's a bit of blurred lines there, as well as transhumanism. So there could be a really solid argument made along those lines, or something that looks really cool along those lines that's kind of sucking people in a bit during this period of time. And I would just kind of give that some time. Once Venus is jumping into Scorpio, it's going to be in a very different relationship to that Pluto. It's going to be squaring that Pluto. So we're going to see a different kind of a perspective with that. And there may be a bit of a falling out along those lines. Maybe this is like an augmented reality thing, or how do we make humans better than they actually are without considering whether that's something that we actually want. Also, there's a broad kind of period of time where we have very little Earth. Pretty much all of the Earth that we're going to be able to get is when the moon is going through Earth signs. And down the road, we will get Uranus going back into Taurus. And yet that in and of itself is not at all the most grounded kind of an energy. So notice how much stuff we have in air signs and water signs for quite a while here. This is not grounded. This is mist, basically. So also keeping that in mind, that it can be wonderful to utilize these energies to create some sense of momentum when it comes to ideas and how we're feeling about things and what it is that we're wanting, where our desires lie, where our comforts lie, things like this, connections with other people and so forth. But there may be a bit of overlooking some details or not double checking things, etc. There's a risk of saying a word that I don't like to apply to Libra very much. And I don't just mean this in terms of this Venus, but there is a bit of, and I say this as someone who has all of my personal planets in water and air, there's a bit of an airheadedness kind of a vibe to what's going on here. I think it's really lovely and fun, but just kind of keeping that in mind, that there may need to be some grounding of what it is that we're doing a little bit later. So starting with the first lunation that's relevant here, as we have Venus moving through Libra, we will also have a new moon in Libra as well. This is going to be right after the moon comes through, conjoins Venus. So we should be feeling with that day before this new moon, 19th, 20th of October approximately, we should be feeling pretty good about our connections, about our future. There should be some really nice hope there. But as the moon starts to move into this new moon phase, notice how we have this configuration. This is the T-square that I'm mentioning. We have Jupiter at 24 degrees of Cancer. It's not at all exactly opposite to Pluto. This is about 6-7-ish degrees off. They're going to get just a tad bit closer before Jupiter winds up going retrograde and backing off of this opposition. But it's there for sure. When these two are aligned in this way with Earth in the middle, I'm definitely going to give it a full 10-degree orb. These are extremes. And what's interesting about this alignment, it's still very personal on the Jupiter side here, even though this Jupiter isn't in Libra, the sign that is officially opposite to Aquarius. But there's this mushiness for sure to this Jupiter in Cancer, which is very personal, very protective of what one cares about and loves. It's very emotionally driven, basically. It's very instinctual. So that being opposite to Pluto, which can be very cold, and Aquarius, which can be very calculating, there's a definite, clear opposite type of a nature to what these two are representing. The human element, which in and of itself can become out of balance with Jupiter in Cancer, that can become overprotective and therefore defensive of one's own, quote unquote, and therefore offensive to what it considers to be the other, quote unquote. And Pluto, which is social power, certainly it's social transformation, things like this out in Aquarius, but it can be very, very calculating. And so I would hope that we don't have, for instance, some consideration of like a tech oligarchy that is trying to push that Jupiter and Cancer in a protective us versus them kind of a direction. But what's interesting is with that opposition, I feel like there's still a breakdown there. So I do feel like there's going to be a lot of infighting coming up. There's a few other configurations that are going to be kind of weird, especially during this period of time. As the sun is moving through those late degrees of Libra, we should also keep in mind that we have some minor planets out in late Aries, which is also going to wind up calling some things into question on a specific side, where people think that they're in agreement, but they're actually not. So that is something to really keep in mind here. Not to mention, this is a decan of extremes, which is a 10-degree section of every sign. So there are 36 decans, each of 10 degrees in the 360 degrees of the zodiac wheel. And this last decan, the third decan of Libra, is really about things getting extremely out of balance and this imperative to bring them back into some sense of reasonability. It's where things have just gone absolutely kind of haywire and it needs to be brought back. So there's going to be a lot of tension around those things, around justice, around probably even legality, around people creating tricks and traps for others, which may not even be on what we would perceive to be quote unquote the other side, even for one's own side. And so, I think there's something of infighting that winds up leading to some sort of a weird fall from grace due to an imbalance during this period of time. So strong dynamics in emotional connections and activity. Again, lots of air, lots of water. This isn't very grounded, and yet it's very emotional and very social. So the stories that we tell ourselves are going to be really important here too, around who's on the ins, who's on the outs, and there's going to be some shifting ground when it comes to that. So very strong dynamics, power dynamics, honestly, is probably what I should have said there. And a lot of activity when it comes to that. I think there's also going to be some major discomfort over going too far too fast, at least from the perspective of the Venus that's involved here. So it's not really aspected right now. It's moved off of that grand trine, off of the opposition to Neptune. It's really kind of free floating right now in Libra, which is to say right now, it's not really able to act upon the situation other than to try to keep the Libra aspect of this in check, which is going to be difficult, especially when there's such an egging on of the imbalance to that sun and moon, that new moon there, from both Jupiter and from Pluto. Not to mention, also notice that this is just past the exact conjunction of Mercury and Mars and Scorpio, and these are configured to Jupiter and Saturn. So there's going to be accountability. This is what I'm kind of trying to get at, but not yet. And that's the thing, is that Venus can't act on this situation quite yet. And we have a Mercury retrograde coming up that's going to be quite significant in all of this as well. And the thing with a grand trine like this is that if there's a bad behavior that Mercury and Mars are trying to do, which is potentially, if we wanted to take this in the most kind of bad behavior that we could see, or some extremes of examples, this would be lies, deceit, manipulation, especially psychological or intellectual manipulation, bad numbers, just straight up putting out numbers that aren't true, very crude language, hate language, like hate speech, threats, things like this, trying to intimidate people through communication, things like this. So when it comes to that, the weird thing about a grand trine, and this one with Jupiter and Saturn, these two will bring accountability, but not yet. They're going to allow it for now. When we get that Mercury retrograde, I think is when we start to see some consequences coming through. And what's interesting is that that's then when we get Venus over here with Mercury, which is retrograde. And that's when we get the Venus grand trine in this. So I think we actually see some, again, weird, crude, very yucky stuff to people who are sensitive playing out. Just try to remind yourself, just wait it out. There's going to be consequences for that. But again, if things are going too far, too fast, they're getting really out of balance, and it looks like there's, things are going really off the rails, basically, it's probably going to be kind of uncomfortable to witness that. But again, just hold on, just hold out. And maybe try not to get in the mix yourself, because there's going to be consequences big time for that kind of thing. Now, on the plus side, this is a new moon in Libra, and it's a new moon in Libra that is ruled by Venus in Libra. So in and of itself, on a personal level, this does speak to new social connections, strong encouragement of like-minded people and between like-minded people, building each other up, affirming each other, supporting each other, things like this. So maybe we have people kind of coming together. I think this is a few days after there's a lot of people that are planning to come together, if you know what I mean. But connecting with people that are of a like mind and being really supportive of each other. So this is going to be really helpful to that end too. So our second lunation that's going to be ruled by this Venus here, notice how we have this lunation, this new moon is at 28 degrees and 21 minutes of Libra. We have 28 degrees, 15 minutes of Libra for Venus as it's ruling this next lunation. So we have Venus right in that area where the new moon happened. So these lunations, they're definitely going to be connected to each other. Again, Taurus is ruled by Venus, and so Venus is the ruler of this lunation. And what is even more of a bit of an issue here, not only do we have a full moon, which tends to stir things up in a more extreme kind of a way than a new moon does, where we have the sun and the moon on the same side. Here we have the sun and the moon on either side here. Of course, during lunations, we tend to have a lot more police action, a lot more stuff going on with hospitals. People just tend to get a little bit haywire, as it is with any sort of a full moon. But not only do we have Venus now in that T-square that we were looking at the sun and the moon in before, we have a really close opposition between Mars and Uranus here. And a quick reminder, this one's going to be on the 5th of November. So this really brings up extremes. Venus is going to be better at trying to find the balance of this decan than the sun and the moon were when Venus was not aspected at all under the new moon. But it's still a lot of tension there. And the thing with Mars and Uranus is that it can go very much awry. It can be very explosive, literally and figuratively. This could be an explosive argument that gets way out of hand with Mercury up there and Mercury about to station retrograde and then do multiple oppositions to that Uranus. We actually have a basket formation that is taking place between Mars, Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. So remember how we had an interesting Kite alignment from Venus earlier on. Now we have an alignment with Mars. And instead of opposition to Neptune, we're dealing with an opposition to Uranus, which is much more unpredictable and much more, again, explosive, erratic. This could be like threats that kind of can't be taken back. There may be an attempt to, again, with that Mercury that's about to go retrograde, but there's this rushing. It almost looks ego-based. Like, why would you rush this hard? It would be weirdly personally defensive. Again, we could see the breakdown of some alliances with these, the way that this is all aligned. I'm also noticing that we still have that trine is breaking down between Jupiter and Mars. It's still kind of within orb. Jupiter is ruling the Mercury-Mars conjunction as well as these placements because Jupiter rules both Sagittarius and Pisces. But it's these weirdly extreme alignments here, which is why I'm using this very strong language of it's imperative. It's imperative to find a balance between extremes for this kind of an alignment to not go awry. Just a reminder, we have a full moon with an opposition between Jupiter and Pluto and an opposition between Mars and Uranus. This can absolutely get out of hand. And it could wind up breaking down some alliances. Again, we have at the crosshairs of this opposition, we have Venus and Libra, which is going to speak to alliances. And there's this just extreme rush of energy that's built into this. So really, on a personal level, taking time with decision-making, I don't think that we're going to be seeing that in the world, and I think that's part of the problem here. But on a personal level, we can do that. Taking our time, allowing for that Venus and Libra to do its thing, which is consider things, weigh the matters out, measure twice before cutting, right? So taking the time with decision making, using reason and long-term planning for harmonious results. So utilizing, again, both the strength of Venus there, but also, again, the Saturn aspect of Libra as well. This is the season where we're trying to plan out, okay, we've had the harvest. What now are we going to do in terms of making this stretch for 5 months, right? So those long-term plans, and how are we going to do so in a way where we don't get stressy about it, come February, right? So harmony, long-term plans. Now, on a personal level, again, we will also be feeling these extremes of energy, but being more reasonable than a lot of the people in power. Hopefully we can do something better with this than they will, acting on impulses. But there's going to be a lot of ideas, projects, activities, opportunities that are available for us to act upon here. And we may get really excited. That's one thing with that opposition between the Mercury-Mars on one side and then Uranus over here. This could be like a new idea that is just rushing in, and we're like, oh man, I want to do something with this. Let's get started. Let's get people on board. Let's act upon this, right? So there could even be some interesting opportunities that come through to do something like that. Again, I would just take your time. No need to rush here. Rushing is going to lead to rough results with this kind of an alignment. And then finally, I just want to point out again, let me pull this back to the previous one. So between these lunations, the strongest alignment that we have here is that square between Venus and Jupiter. Now, this is fine. It's not a problem. It's actually going to be helpful, really, for both of them, because they will be calling each other into question. And so they will be able to balance things out a bit. The Pluto aspect of that adds an edge that complicates things. But having both of the benefics in their own dignity, Jupiter exalted, Venus in its own sign, this is really helpful, especially when it comes to, again, human, personal, emotional concerns, right? Relatability, connecting, feeling like you belong, feeling like there's a sense of proper harmonious community and so forth. So there may be a lot of excitement along those lines that we're working through and that we're working with, that we're utilizing. But again, what I also like about this square is that Venus is able to call into question the potential for one-sidedness that can come through with a Jupiter in Cancer. And Jupiter in Cancer is definitely going to encourage some strong decision-making and, again, the initiation aspect of Libra as a cardinal sign, being able to make a decision. Now, it will encourage a little bit more of emotionality and subjectivity in that. That might be really wonderful to try to keep under control, still use the reasonability, but try not to get into the analysis paralysis that can sometimes come through Libra. But yeah, I think that that's a lot of what I wanted to cover here. So we will take this through sign by sign and look at where some of these opportunities are coming through for all of us on a personal level. But before that, I do just want to say thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really appreciate everyone being here. And if you don't mind giving the video a thumbs up, I would also greatly appreciate that. It helps to spread the video around. And do consider subscribing. If you like content like this, we tend to look at transits, take them through the houses, look at them on a collective, global kind of a level as well. And I would love to have you stick around for more of those. And thank you also so much to the members of this channel for your support. Thank you so much to Angel Niblock, Michelle Howell, JJ, Deborah Keel-Leavitt, Patrick McKenney, Jody, Anne Marie, C. Rezer, Peace Out, Maria Serralhiro, Rachel Windholtz, The Z-Man 1291, Aya, Lynn Newman, Long T Standing, The Nelson Cat Maya, Connie DiMartino, Dali Gizi, Mango JT, B Love, Grace, Psyche Lloyd, Noah, Aquarian Antiquarian, Susan Martin, Jonathan Mason, Chad Wiseman, Ezekiel David LaRosa, Adrienne K, On the Road, SP, Karen, Teresa Jones, Seda Topkuoglu, Sherry Leas, Horse Dog Notebook, Justice League Pie, Nioke Beam, Ashley Gonzalez, Create, Surrender Rao, Gales Tarot and Astrology, Talitha McKenzie, JY0123, K from NH, Denise Sanin, and Pitar Music. Thank you all so much. Much love to you for your support. And if you are interested in membership perks and things like that, there's information in the description box below. And without any further ado, let's get into the sign by sign. All right, so for Aries, we have Venus in Libra going through your 7th house, and this has to do primarily with partnerships, your connection to other people. So this should bring a sense of balance, peace, harmony to your partnerships, to your connections with other people. This can even wind up bringing you together with more people, so there's a sense of unity, of grace, of comfort in connections as well. So this could be new relationships or healing certain relationships. This should have you and other people open to resolution, open to a sense of union and creating harmony, creating understanding basically between you and other people. Your interactions with other people should be marked by a bit more diplomacy, a bit more like civility, reasonability. Again, that kind of social graces should be coming out through your connections with other people during this period of time. And along with that kind of sense of connection and unity, it should also help to bring people in who are going to be pretty beneficial to you as well. So receiving a sense of, it's almost like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It can be kind of pulling people in who are able to see positive aspects of you as well. And that hopefully being kind of a mutual thing of you also kind of liking connecting with people a bit more, especially now that Mars has moved out of this house and Venus is now coming into this house. It's a much different kind of an energy that you're dealing with in your 7th house. Yeah, this is really excellent for negotiation, for contracts, for working with clients, and having that go over just generally quite well. One thing I would say is there can be a bit of a social indulgence here. So that's usually the aspect of Venus that can go a bit overboard, especially perhaps in close family connections that you have. So if you have a romantic partnership where you have a family built up with them, you may just be feeling like really comfortable and cozy in that connection and may wind up overlooking some other things just due to the square that will wind up building up between that Venus in your 7th and then Jupiter in your 4th being quite indulgent there. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Aries, with this one. It's pretty straightforward, but it should be quite helpful. So I hope it treats you well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Taurus, we have Venus in your 6th house of routines, habits, health, things like this. So when it comes to your working life, your team members, people that you work with, people who work for you, this should help a lot with creating a sense of harmony with those relationships and also with the directionality or the aims that you're working toward, being able to get different people kind of on the same track or on the same path, on the same page with each other as to what it is that you are trying to accomplish together. You may even find that there is a less of a sense of strict hierarchies, but more of just a kind of getting along, a sense of balance and peace in those connections as well. Also possibly creating new teams or, again, bringing harmony to teams that already exist, basically. This can even be on the home front. So wherever you have a routine or work to get done and you share it with someone else, so if you have chores that you share with someone else or whatever, that should be able to kind of go over a little bit easier during this period of time. Now, also then in terms of just your enjoyment of it, that's another thing that Venus can really bring in is a sense of just enjoying things. So when it comes to your routine, if there are any aspects of that where you feel little frustrations and so forth, with Venus here, I would say that really is speaking to there's something that should be addressed around that. And Venus is going to help a lot for you to be able to do that as well. So joy, bringing joy into or beautifying your daily routines, making them a lot more comfortable, a lot more kind of beautiful, really, or even wonderful. Even maybe adding some indulgence into them. That may be an area where we wind up going a bit overboard. So this could, for instance, be with the square between Venus in your 6th and then Jupiter in your 3rd. talking a lot and kind of socializing at work a lot, try to make sure that things are definitely getting done as well, is what I would say about that. But also, creating space, creating time for personal indulgence, for self-care, for wellness, for a sense of being able to relax a bit more in your life. So how can you create a routine or habit around joy and wellness and self-care as well? So carving that time out, Venus is going to help with that a lot as well. Now, it is also creative. There's a lot of grace to this. There's the sense of like form and beauty, So when it comes to any sort of creative projects that you're working on, this is going to be really helpful for that, especially if you've been trying to figure out any sort of symmetries or form, things like this, any sort of craft. This is going to help with dexterity and with just the kind of vision of how it should look, with the aesthetic basically that's involved there. So introducing creativity or aesthetic to your tasks, or if any of your tasks or routines have to do with those areas, this is going to be really helpful to that as well. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Taurus, with this. It may be a little bit of a quiet transit, but it's going to be super helpful. So I hope that we can all really tap into the opportunity it's presenting. And yeah, I hope it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Gemini, we have Venus in Libra is transiting through your fifth house. Full disclosure, I am a Gemini rising, and I am super psyched for this one because the fifth house has to do with joys and pleasures, creativity. It's where Venus rejoices, so it loves to be here. But additionally, luckily for Gemini rising, this house also, it contains Libra for us. So this is a very like maximal fifth house kind of alignment period of time that's coming up. Really wonderful. So when it comes to joyful connections, when it comes to those kind of humorous, more lighthearted, maybe interest-based or hobby-based kinds of connections that you have, when it comes to connections with children, there can be a lot of just kind of magnanimity, peace, balance, harmony, feeling like those connections are going over really well, feeling kind of seen in that more joyful way. So if you are kind of a humorous person, just having that go over a lot better, receiving a lot of that joy back as well. But especially for matters of like joyful socialization or joyful activity. So if you are an artist, if you are a creative type, or you really appreciate those things, this is going to be really helpful for that too. So in terms of art appreciation across the board, music, film, theater, whatever it is, this is going to help a lot with connecting with that and enjoying it more. And I know that sounds simple and like, yeah, of course you enjoy the things you enjoy. No, there are definitely periods of time where you're able to like sink more into that and indulge in that a little bit more and get more out of that. Also just aligning you to certain types of art or whatever it is that really resonate with you as well. So this is really perfect for connecting with and appreciating those creative arts as well, but also for if you are an artist, creating that and doing so from a place which is really like aesthetically or form driven or beauty, grace driven. There's this sense of order that's coming into this place. It's really supported. Now, also then there's that social aspect of this. So there's this desire to socialize, possibly to go out more, to enjoy your hobbies, to just maybe even like nightlife, things like that, to just go out and enjoy yourself and connect with people. Having Libra in your fifth house does introduce some aspect of that to you as something that you are kind of inclined toward liking. Venus is really going to wind up amplifying that. Also, positive news regarding all of these different aspects of life. So yeah, overall, just a really excellent time to refocus on joy, on humor, on pleasure, on that kind of spirited aspect of life that's really enjoyable. I will say, though, there is a heightened risk, especially for us, around issues of indulgence. So really enjoying the enjoyable aspects of life and possibly backburnering some other things. I will also say there's going to be a square between this Venus and then Jupiter in your second. that's a bit of a risk of overspending. So that's something to kind of keep in check as well around the time of the perfection of that. But yeah, other than that, this is a really wonderful transit. Yeah, I hope that it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Cancer, we have Venus in Libra is in your fourth house. And this is the house of home, family, your roots, your core, your soul, basically. This is a very private place. This is your private life. So there's a lot of potential for balance, for peace, for creating that, for creating a sense of beauty as well and order within your home, unity. So hopefully on the level of both the aesthetic of your home, which is going to be something important to you naturally with Libra there, but also in terms of the energies between people. So you may, if you do smudging and things like that, this would be a great time to kind of even more ritualize that. So maybe do like a super smudge, and really get into some sort of like broader ritualization around that to really clear out the space. I think that it's going to be a really wonderful time for you to amplify that with Venus and Libra here, especially if you are trying to create that sense of energetic harmony within your home space or with family members and things like that. So yeah, a lot of harmony, a lot of a sense of peace within that home space and with family members. If there's anything you need to work on that you need to heal with some family members, probably a decent time to talk about that, to just kind of speak on those topics. If this is child related, I will just throw out there, you do have Mars in your fifth, so it might get a little bit heated, but it should be able to resolve pretty well as long as everyone can stay patient and reserved, I guess is the word that's coming through, just even-handed, not getting too boisterous or taking things too personally. So yeah, improved relationships with family. This can also really drive up nostalgia because with this being the place of the roots, it's also the place of your past. So this could be around your childhood or just connections, Libra here, old relationships, old friends. There could be some reconnection there because Venus does bring a sense of union. So there may be a reconnection or bringing something from the past and connecting with it again. But on an energetic level, I think you're just going to be kind of feeling that a bit more. But hopefully, like this would incline toward those were good times and remembering them fondly. And that can be a really wonderful energy to be in, even if you're not reconnecting with the past, with connecting to harmonious, happy kinds of energies. Even if there were awful aspects to those relationships, remembering the positive aspects of them can wind up then connecting you to similar energies as you go forward too. But yeah, also on another level, potentially hosting or bringing people in to your home, enjoying some private gatherings, being around people who are really close to you, especially family members, close friends, partners, people like this, that can bring a lot of joy into your life. I will just say though, there is a major thing potential around major indulgence on a personal level for you throughout this time. So that might be something that you want to keep an eye on because it can go a bit overboard. You have Jupiter in your first house, and then you have that with a square building up to it from Venus in your fourth. This is on a very personal level, deeply indulgent. So I would say on some level, go for it, but we can definitely overdo it when we're dealing with these two, and especially when we're dealing with them in a square to each other, because they're going to kind of build each other up and kind of feed into those potentially more difficult aspects of each other like that. But yeah, it should be a really wonderful period of time for you. So I hope it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Leo, we have Venus in Libra is transiting through your third house, and this is the house of a lot of different things. So we've got communication, connection, exchange, people, places, things around you, so your neighborhood, your locality, the actual experience of travel, going around, going to different places, exploring your environment, things like this also show up in this house, even like technology, there's a lot of different topics that kind of wind up falling into this area, but a lot of it is very much around that communication and the exchange and that which is close around you. So there should be a lot of balance, peace, harmony coming to this area, charming kinds of communication, that going over well. So your voice being taken as naturally you have Libra here, so that's helpful. But Venus coming through this area should have the words that you say come off well to other people, be accepted, basically, to strike people as reasonable, as graceful, as harmonious, as charming, as beautiful. So this is really helping to that end. But also when it comes to those peer or close connections, connections with community members, siblings, peers, those should go over helpfully, mutually helpfully, and joyfully throughout this time as well. So connecting well with those people. If there's anything going on with a sibling, is a good kind of a transit to try to come to some resolution around that. That can be quite reasonable. When it comes to your communication, not only charming and graceful, but like I said, reasonable, and then therefore also persuasive. People are likely to hear you more as well. There's this kind of magnetic quality to Venus as well, which is going to kind of draw people in, be willing to hear you out, and then therefore an opportunity for you to be able to persuade people well, and not with a heavy hand, but just with, you know, a graceful way of expressing yourself. So getting out into the local community, socializing, sure, that would be wonderful if you can go to some community events or things like this, if there's a work party, etc. But just kind of getting out, getting around, going to the market, taking short trips, going for walks. This is also really wonderful for the mind, is another thing that takes place, that's kind of ruled over by this house, is the mental processes. So reading, taking in information, writing, especially creatively and in a way that is aesthetically pleasing. So poetry or prose, if you are writing in kind of a journal or a more nonfiction kind of just to the point kind of a way, this should have you, again, be able to be more persuasive, but it will also add those kinds of creative or artistic, aesthetic, harmonious elements to it as well. And then, yeah, finally, this may wind up drawing up some interest, some fascination, some joy around learning about art, fashion, beauty, matters of society. So even just political opinion and things like this, you may be finding some great types of media that are fun. So for instance, I'll just give you a personal example. I've been trying to tune out of just the news recently, and that was a lot of my feed. So whenever there's something that's kind of interesting that comes across my feed that's not that, you know, I'll tune into it more. And so like a recent kick that I wound up getting on was like cake decorating stuff, you know, that would be something that would really fit into this, but just something that's soothing, that brings you a sense of peace and harmony, and things around beauty and that form, aesthetic, things like that. So yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would kind of warn about with that, there can be an indulgent aspect of Venus. And so you may find yourself scrolling a lot more, or like going through reels a lot more. So just something to kind of keep in mind, maybe if you're intentionally wanting to keep that in check. But other than that, it's a very lovely transit, and I hope it treats you super well. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Virgo, we have Venus in Libra transiting through your second house. So your second house primarily has to do with your own resources, and that can be tangible and intangible. So possessions, income, the money that you have, the investments that you have, property, things like this, but also your skills and what it is that you bring to the table. This is also a place of value. So what is it that you value? What are your values? As well as a place of like self-reliance, right? So really excellent opportunity here to seek opportunities for gain. I'm going to throw it out here that in addition to Venus in your second house, you do have Jupiter transiting through your 11th house. So this is tying together and these two will square each other. This is combining a sense of these are the resources you have available to you, and some of them are social, some of them are your connections. So seeking those opportunities for gain, whether it be just bringing an extra excellent attitude to your professional connections, your colleagues, things like this, or asking for opportunities, asking for a raise, things like this, just actively seeking those things out, I think is going to be really excellent during this period of time. It's more likely to go over well. This is also really supportive to your sense of self-worth and valuing yourself. Like I said, there's a self-orientation to this house as it comes right off of the first house. So noticing and appreciating your own self-worth, valuing your skills. If it has been something that you have worked on quite a bit to be self-reliant, appreciating how far you've come with all of that as well is something that can be really well supported here. It can also make that more visible to other people. So that is something to also keep in mind when you're approaching others, is that your own skills and value and worth and what it is that you bring to the table, it's more visible, it's more magnetic, it's more able to be noticed and to help to persuade someone else of your value with Venus in this house. This is also just going to kind of draw you toward a sense of beauty and quality and want to bring that into your environs, basically. So in terms of a sense of harmonious peace, stability, security, creating a sense of comfort for yourself, there's going to be a major inclination with Venus here toward that. And so there may also be where that winds up going a bit overboard here, which is kind of impulsive spending to create a sense of greater peace and so forth. So if there are certain things that you feel this is going to be so much of a help to my environment, to my sense of security and stability and so on and so forth, this is a wonderful investment, basically. For a tangible or an intangible reason, this is going to improve my mood. This is going to improve my view of myself. Just thinking that through a few times and making sure that that's necessary, making sure that maybe there's not another way that you're able to do that if you are on a budget or something like this, may be very worthwhile, because this is going to say yes to that a lot. And it can be a little bit indulgent. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, again, really attracting gifts, bonuses, support, resources throughout this time. And this Venus is in the second house is going to be a big part of that. But like I said, it's aligning to Jupiter in your 11th house, which is already inclined to help along those lines. So it's likely that you're just going to be kind of pulling that in from different places. And you may actually be quite pleasantly surprised by how much support and how many resources are available to you. But yeah, I hope that this transit treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me, Virgo. All right, so for Libra, we have Venus in Libra transiting through your first house. So this is really wonderful. This is bringing a sense of magnetism to you. So Venus can really draw things in. And the first house is you, yourself, your personality, kind of how you approach things and how other people and yourself see you. So this is bringing a lot of charm, attraction, harmony, peace, balance, grace to that. And that's what's also coming off to other people. So you should be able to be a lot more kind of persuasive and pull things in toward you throughout this period of time and just be more at peace with yourself, to be more harmonious within yourself, and therefore be able to kind of put that energy off in a way that's really beneficial to you as well. Also, if you are due for any sort of cosmetic stuff, haircuts, nails, even, more invasive kinds of procedures and things like that, this can be a good time to try and schedule those things in or to change things up for yourself. This could be a wardrobe thing. This could be just kind of taking on a more self-respecting and even like self-exalting kind of image for yourself as well. It should go over well. I would even throw out there, we're going to get a new moon in Libra. And I know I threw the date in on the slides before. Those are also good for cosmetic stuff, and especially in Libra, and especially in your first house, and especially when it's ruled by that Venus that's in your third house or in your first house. So that would be a really excellent time to pursue something like that. But yeah, also there's this aspect of initiation from you that's in the first house as well. So initiating some really positive social connections, pulling people in, kind of creating connections. So either unifying or reunifying with people, whether it be groups of people, individuals, partners, friends, what have you. It doesn't really matter the type of connection. Venus is very willing to bring in all sorts of positive connections. It's known as ruling friendship, basically. So there's a lot of opportunity for creating those social connections throughout this time. And then, yeah, just feeling very comfortable and confident in yourself. So bringing a sense of self-appreciation, of recognition to yourself and to your conscious mind around your own sense of balance, what it is that you bring to the table, especially when it comes to matters of peace and harmony. With Libra, you may find yourself to be something of a peacemaker, really recognizing and appreciating that kind of reasonability and beauty that you can bring to any sort of a situation, recognizing and appreciating that more with Venus in this house. Yeah, one thing I would just throw out there as well is that this can be an indulgent kind of an alignment. So that is something to keep an eye on around the edges of this, is just it will say yes to you a lot. That's one thing that Venus does, and it would love to do that when it's in this kind of a position. So it's not going to say no to you. It will be your imperative to know where your limits are and to maybe not give in to yourself quite as much as Venus would say, yeah, go for it. But yeah, I think that that's pretty much what I have for you, Libra. It's a really wonderful transit, so I hope it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Scorpio, we have Venus in Libra transiting through your 12th house. And this is the place of your subconscious. This is a place of some pretty strong private experiences. So internal experiences, your inner world. This is a place of solitude. It's a very spiritual kind of liminal place as well. And there can be a lot of like emotional, psychological, spiritual kinds of energy here that we're not always dealing with on a day-to-day basis. There can also be secrets and things that go on here. So this is bringing a sense of balance, peace, harmony to those areas of your life. So when it comes to those really close connections where you are very like revealing to those people and they are to you, those closest of connections, those can be really helped out by this transit here. And the sense of being able to trust, being able to open up more vulnerable aspects of yourself and feel safe doing so. Now, this may also bring up matters of secret admirers. If you are a secret admirer of someone else, that may become a bit more noticeable with Venus in this place. So that is something to keep in mind on both sides of that. So you may recognize someone, someone else may wind up recognizing you as well. There's a lot of appreciation with Venus as well, though. So appreciating that sense of solitude, spiritual connection, creativity, just enjoying your inner world. So if you are into any sort of creative kinds of works, if you are a big music person, if you're a big film person, if you're a big theater person, whatever it is, just being able to experience that joy internally a lot more. It's kind of like the volume on that is really turned up. So maybe it's esoteric books or things like this, meditation, yogic practices, things that work on your spirit and on that liminal space where there's an aspect of you that's kind of beyond the veil. Working on that aspect of yourself and connecting well with that aspect of yourself is really wonderful here too. And feeling a sense of union, like internal union. So quietly working creatively, spiritually is really supported by this transit too. And then, yeah, just internally feeling at peace, feeling a sense of internal grace, of a sense of internal order, kind of feeling like you're comfortable with what's going on inside of you. This can also really help to recognize a sense of internal beauty. So the beauty of your spirit too. Now, there may be an indulgent aspect of this as well, so that is something to keep in mind. That appreciation for solitude may become an indulgence in solitude. And far be it from me to judge that. I definitely do that quite a bit. But just keeping in mind if there are certain things that are getting neglected because of not really wanting to deal with people, just enjoying being in your own energy, that is something to keep in mind. This could really encourage you to have a lot of deliveries. But yeah, other than that, just really helpful for a sense of release, forgiveness. Again, that sense of peace and balance and harmony internally. And especially with Venus and Libra here around matters of relationships and how they have impacted you deeply and how they have impacted you on a spiritual, emotional, psychological level as well. Healing around that, forgiving around that. And that may not mean reconnecting with someone or forgiving them overtly. This is a very private place. This is forgiveness for your sake that's going on in this area. So yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Scorpio. So I hope that this transit treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Sagittarius, we have Venus in Libra transiting through your 11th house of friends, allies, benefactors, groups, organizations that you belong to, like-minded individuals, society, as well as hopes, dreams, aspirations, things like this. So there's a lot of focus on creating a sense of balance, peace, harmony in your friendships and in groups that you're involved in. This should go over pretty well. This should be something that is an energy that you can kind of tap into with those connections or that you can kind of bring to the situation. So if there have been any issues, difficulties with friends or groups that you belong to, this would be a good influence under which to try to address that in a reasonable and kind of amicable way. It also points to people being very willing to help you or people recognizing you and people being something of a good resource for you to be able to rely on. So the social resources that you have available to you should be very favorably disposed to you during this period of time as well. So those resources that help, opportunities, new connections through friends, through groups that you belong to, through networking. I would definitely recommend networking under this influence because with those kinds of people, you're also likely to be coming off a lot more graceful, a lot more reasonable, a lot more magnanimous during this period of time and persuasive. So also bringing a lot of joy to this. So Venus tends to point to areas where we have a lot of enjoyment, really enjoying collaboration, group activity, socializing, getting out there, connecting with people, sharing ideas, especially again with people who are like-minded to you. So that's one thing with the 11th house that it speaks to quite directly is everyone on the same page? Is everyone kind of going in the same direction? Those are the kinds of people who wind up coming through in this place. So being able to create a lot of connections, a lot of like a sense of union with those around you and really enjoying to do that as well. So you may find yourself just kind of going out more, connecting with people more, socializing more, wanting to go get a coffee, wanting to converse and connect and things like that as well. Now, you may also find yourself like reconnecting with, revisiting, or even coming into a sense of union or alignment with something new in terms of goals, those hopes, dreams, aspirations that show up in this place. So a new thing that you're wanting to strive toward, a new rung on the ladder that you're kind of wanting to climb. It's this new kind of dream, a new goal that you're setting for yourself, or something that you're revisiting, that you're reconnecting with that maybe seemed to fall by the wayside for a little while. Venus brings us into connection with the things that it's touching, and it's touching your hopes, dreams, aspirations. So it's reconnecting you with those things. And yeah, overall, just feeling very hopeful. This is a very hopeful, aspirant house. And so to have Venus coming through here, just kind of seeing the possibilities, seeing the opportunities around you, being able to have some pretty good timing, have a good rhythm with things, being in the right place at the right time to connect with the right people, basically. But yeah, other than that, the only kind of caution that I would give around this is just indulgence when you're socializing. So, if you are going out, trying to keep in check how much you are consuming, things like that. But yeah, other than all of that, I think that's pretty much what I have for you. So I hope that this transit treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Capricorn, Venus in Libra is transiting through your 10th house, and this has to do with your public life, your reputation, your legacy, your public image, your role, your position, your ambitions, things like this. So for those following a traditional career path, that usually falls squarely within this 10th house. But if you are not, then this is just speaking to that kind of public role that you are playing in the world. So bringing a lot of recognition to that, to what it is that you're bringing to the situation through those positive interactions with people in the public sphere. So if this is career, this is positive professional interactions. This could be really good word of mouth being recommended, or this could be people who are really willing to help you out, bosses, authority figures, especially recognizing what it is that you're bringing to the table, especially perhaps in terms of attitude and the energy that you're bringing, the positivity, the grace, the harmony, the sense of balance and reason and order that it is that you bring to either the situation, the team, or your work itself. So also then receiving a sense of praise and admiration at work for those things too. Again, particularly around your ability to bring balance, peace, harmony, union, bringing people together, social graces. That's going to be a big thing here. That's what's going to be seen the most. So leaning into that, I would definitely recommend. And yeah, it's going to bring in a lot of opportunities as well. It's a very helpful planet. So opportunities to work on something that feels really aligned to you. And that's really what these transits wind up bringing. It's not just that they will hand us things on a silver platter, but they will offer us an opportunity to work with something. And with Venus, that is going to be something that feels really aligned or that's somehow diplomatic. Again, speaking to all those things that I was mentioning around peace. This could be a human relations kind of a thing. This could be a team management kind of a thing, a morale thing, bringing a sense of reason, order, form, like organizing things correctly, bringing aesthetics to some sort of situation, bringing some creative thinking to a situation as well, or just beauty, decorating maybe, and maybe you're decorating for some holidays or something like this, and just generally making good impressions on people. It really is the energy that's being brought here. There is that professional grace that Libra brings and that competence that Libra brings. Saturn does exalt here. But when it comes to Venus here, it's really just leaning so strongly into that social harmony that I would really emphasize that in your professional connections through this time. So yeah, also really excellent if there's any sort of brand or image stuff that you're wanting to work on, if you are wanting to brush up your CV, if you have clients, if you are wanting to like update your face to that, if you have a website, if you have a profile or something like this, this is really excellent for doing that specifically as well. So if that's something you've been kind of forgetting to do or you've been backburnering for a while, this would be a great time to kind of get on top of that, because Venus is going to help with having that be persuasive, having that pull people in. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn. So it's a really wonderful, very helpful transit, and I hope it treats you super well. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Aquarius, we have Venus in Libra transiting through your 9th house. And this is the place of personal expansion, so expansion of your horizons and of your mind, physically and internally as well. So this is a place of higher learning of philosophy, spirituality, these kinds of higher education oriented houses, liberal arts, humanities, things like this. But travel also comes through here, foreign cultures, things like this, publishing as well, and sharing your ideas, sharing your knowledge. So this is really a wonderful place for this to show up. It's bringing a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure and fascination to this area of life. So there's a real desire to expand your horizons. So you may be feeling something of either a wanderlust or this urge to bring in some new kinds of information or new knowledge and connect with learning again. So you may be finding some really wonderful books or opportunities for travel or courses that you're fascinated by, wanting to connect with different cultures, maybe even wanting to explore a bit beyond your usual kind of stomping grounds and get outside of your comfort zone a bit and just discover new things to basically bring into your realm of experience. So major enjoyment of learning of philosophical topics. If you want to get together with friends and just kind of discuss things, especially if you have philosophically oriented friends or academically oriented friends, and just kind of discuss those things with them, that's also likely to be really enjoyable during this time. Also, creative studies. So there's more of a mind aspect to the ninth house and kind of digging into like, why do, for instance, like art theory or art history, things like this, the why behind the creativity, and spiritual studies as well. So that also is pretty philosophical, but it's both aspects of that. So both the academic sense of it, but then the very spiritualized sense of that, of kind of feeling like you are following a certain path and feeling like you are following more spiritual guides rather than teachers and masters and people like that. So yeah, definite opportunities through and for personal expansion. So this is another thing I want to kind of emphasize here, is that it can be through expanding your horizons that you come into some wonderful opportunities, or this can also present as really wonderful opportunities to expand your horizons. It's kind of both in terms of that. And then, yeah, other than that, really excellent for publishing, for teaching, for sharing your ideas persuasively. There's this sense of grace and beauty and magnanimity and kind of drawing things in that comes through with Venus. And so if you have that in your ninth house, when you are sharing your ideas, when you're sharing your knowledge, when you're teaching, when you are publishing, putting your ideas out there, they're likely to carry a lot more of that sense of pulling people in and being able to persuade, especially when you are engaging with philosophies or studies or things like this that are about balance, peace, harmony. So this could be like diplomatic studies. Certainly this could pertain to law and those kinds of topics, or any sort of, again, humanities or culture, society oriented topics like that. And where that intersects with creating a sense of peace and harmony, connection, union, common understanding, agreement, civility, reason, order, basically. Now, one thing I would just kind of caution about with this is that Venus can go a bit indulgent. So you may find yourself, to the exclusion of other things, getting really deep into books, or maybe booking a trip that's a little bit outside of the budget. So just kind of things to keep in mind as you are kind of expanding your horizons and exploring in this really wonderful way with Venus here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you, Aquarius. So I hope that this transit treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Pisces, we have Venus and Libra transiting through your eighth house. This is a pretty complex house. It has to do with, on the one hand, quote unquote, other people's resources, but that is tangible and intangible. So the tangible resources, if you have any shared resources with other people, if you are partnered up in a kind of economic partnership with someone, if you have clients or you sell things, you're in business, this can also speak to those kinds of connections, but it also speaks to those intangible resources of others. So their ability to affirm you or their ability to assure you, these matters of trust with other people as well, the emotional and psychological states of those that you're connecting with. So this is helpful. It brings a sense of balance, peace, and harmony to all of these different aspects of life, as well as psychological topics, taboo topics, stigmatized things, things that you need to dig into and research and really try to understand. But yeah, so developing a sense of trust in close connections and partnerships. This should help to, if there's anything that's weird that's going on in this place, it should really bring that to the fore. So that in and of itself can be kind of helpful on the one hand for showing that to you, but also for having you be able to just kind of relax and not worry about if there's something kind of weird going on. It will be presented to you. You will be helped out in this way, basically, if you avail yourself to a full understanding, looking at things from all different angles and being really honest with yourself and others about all of that. This can also help if you're trying to build up those trust muscles with other people. So opportunities to give someone an opportunity to gain your trust and then having them do so can also be a really wonderful way that this winds up coming through. Also, appreciation for the resources that other people are bringing. So what's going on with other people, their emotional, psychological states, but also what they offer you. So the benefits that they bring, the care that they provide, being really appreciative of that and kind of being put very much in touch with that. You may find that there are opportunities for gifts, resources, mutual benefit. Also, though, this other aspect of the eighth house, so mystery, psychology, taboo, stigmatized topics, things that we need to really put effort into figuring out because maybe there's not a lot of work on it. It's kind of esoteric, or there is a need to peel away layers of bias of things. You know, maybe you're doing some research or something like this, or you're diving into some topics of psychology which aren't directly related to you, and therefore you really need to dig up information in order to better understand it. There's an appreciation for these topics. This can also be spiritual connections that are very much outside of yourself. So what's beyond the veil. Divination, things like this may wind up becoming something that you wind up leaning into and appreciating and really enjoying about this period of time too. There is this real desire to bond and merge with this influence as well, and that in and of itself can help with developing trust because I realize I have a typo here. developing trust with other people because of that desire to bond and to merge. These things are really necessary together, right? So we wouldn't want to merge with something that we don't trust, right? So doing this step by step in a graceful, ordered kind of a way, in a balanced, peaceful kind of a way, allowing for things to unfold in their own time, not feeling the need to use force. That's one thing that Venus doesn't bring to the equation. It just brings this ability to create a sense of union and connection with other people. And that should also then help to heal emotional wounds. I should have also said psychological wounds. So this is a very psychological place. And I usually look at it as psychology of other people that you're dealing with, but it does also pertain to ourselves as we can mirror what's going on with other people as well. So are there any codependency things? You tend to pull in and attract and magnetize to you certain types of people. What does that say about your state as well? Not in a judgmental way, but in a healing kind of a way of hopefully also being able to build yourself up through this period of time too. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces. So I hope that this transit treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me.